What's going on, y'all? So, we're basically, I think, about to do the last day's worth of work on the car itself before we head to NJMP Lightning for testing. Um, so this weekend we have the instructor clinic. They chose me to be a mentor for one of the new instructors, so I'm kind of honored. It's pretty cool. So I'll be mentoring my buddy Phil, who honestly could probably figure out how to instruct without my help, but that's who they paired me with. He drives a Civic with a Type R motor and Honda Challenge H2 and wanted to be an instructor. Ken Martinez is also going to be an instructor from H2. So that's pretty cool. And then I'm going to be instructing my friend Sam, as I might have mentioned before. And then I have another student with an Integra, 2001 Integra on Sunday. So lots of Honda people, which is cool. They've kind of like started pairing. They always pair me with the front wheel drive cars, the Honda cars, because I guess they know that I can drive them. A little bit boring, but sitting in the right seat of a unhinged student sometimes in a boring car is better than not. So I'm happy with that. But anyway, today, so my buddy Sean hooked me up with a battery. Thank you, Sean. So we're gonna be putting a new battery in. And then Dylan Dewson hooked me up with some detent springs for the transmission because I was told that it might help with some of the slop in the shifter. So I can only put 2 in without dropping the trans. So I'll put 2 detent springs in, see how it changes the characteristic of the shifter. Then I also want to get a sway bar in the car and just have it in there because you have to remove the header to get them on. So I want to have the sway bar in there in case I do want to try it out at the track. And then, yeah, so, I mean, if I have time, I'd love to measure some toe change under bump. Not sure if I'll get around to that, but yeah. All right, so we have the new battery in. It's the first time I've had a battery in this car that's like new, literally ever. I had a battery in the car. Actually, no, I had a new battery in this car once, and I've owned it since 2016. And then I blew up the new battery shortly after by putting the wrong terminals in on a charger. Anyway, so this is the new one. I marked everything and then I put it down nice and tight. It's like the most secure battery's ever been in my car. You know, listen, baby steps, right? And then these little stakes come with your kit when you buy the edgeless trimming or whatever it is for the splitters. So right now I'm bending one, and the reason I'm doing that is because so the intake air temp sensor sits here, right above a coolant line, and right below a coolant line. So what I plan to do is raise this up with that bracket that I made. So it's basically going to allow it's going to put some spacing in between the hoses. These are eBay hoses on the car, so you know sometimes you got to improvise, but I'll show you the finished product. All right, so what I did was I reinforced this intake air temperature sensor at the connection just to make sure that it's not bending around. And then this is the little bracket, nothing fancy, same thing as here, some zip tie engineering, keeps all the brackets from moving around and abrading anything. So this wire goes basically underneath of here like that. So it goes in between the two, and voila. Yeah, so not perfect, but this has been run like this for 2 years now or so, 1 year and a half, maybe 1 year and a quarter, and it's been okay. So hopefully it holds up for a little more. We'll figure out a long-term solution. Probably need to honestly relocate it up here, but this was just something that I slapped together. So we'll figure it out. Short ram seems to work pretty good on this motor, so that's what we're going with. Then I gotta do other stuff that I talked about in the beginning of this video. So. All right, so what do we have here? So in the Northeast, a lot of us run pretty much the same spring and bar setup all around. I mean, some variations here and there, but you know, a couple people in the Mid-Atlantic run some different things, and people in Texas run different things. But basically, we run stiff springs up front with no bar, and soft springs in the rear with a big bar. And out in California, they do something different. Really, it's just a matter of preference, in my opinion, because having stiffer springs in the rear will bring the ride frequency up in the rear to where the ride frequency needs to be. Having softer springs with a stiffer bar, in theory, will not change the ride frequency going over a bump where both the right and left wheel move up the same amount. But around a corner, the bar twists, and so it adds a similar stiffness to the car as if you had a stiffer spring. So you can valve the shocks to handle the different springs, or you can valve them to handle the bar. It depends on what you like. So I'm running what I'm used to. And this is a front bar. A lot of people in the Northeast have thrown these old ones out. So I have this one, and the car seems that it has like a lot of roll up in the front of the car based on tire temperatures. So we're gonna see if that's actually the case by adding a little more roll stiffness up front, assuming that there's no bends or there's nothing wrong with the toe curve. So we are gonna throw this on just as a backup plan for the test event, and then I'm going to test to see how I like it. Yeah, I mean, maybe I won't, but that's kind of like background on it anyway, and I'll let you guys know what I do. But this one has the end links on it still, and they look to be in pretty good shape. So I can just put that into the car, which is great. It has the mounts on it already. The bushings are in good shape. So this one is off an Integra. I do have one off of a DX Civic. It's actually an EX Civic. It's actually a little thinner, I believe. And so this Integra one, I'm going to try and put it on here. I think that the Civic one probably wouldn't even make a difference, honestly, because it's so skinny. So I don't know what rate this bar is. I don't know how much it adds. It is a solid bar. Maybe it's about 3/4 of an inch. But, yeah. So that's where we're at. But battery's in. Gonna put the shift detent springs in as well. And, yeah. Okay, so I've never actually had this much difficulty removing anything from a Honda transmission, but this bolt is a detent bolt, and as you can see, the top of it has the insert from a ratchet welded to it, because I had a broken ratcheting wrench that I used to try and weld to it. Then the insert fell out, so I took an extractor piece like this and then was able to get it out, but it wouldn't come out otherwise. And this washer was very crushed. As you can see, this washer over here looks to be in good shape. So I talked to Zephyr, my friend, and he said when the washers are crushed like that, it can also cause issues. So hopefully I didn't mess anything up welding to the bolt on the transmission. I don't think I did, but it was a lot of work. There's a lot of tools out. It's kind of a mess here, but we're going to get the 2 detent springs in that I can from the outside, see if that improves the shifter at all, and then we'll put it back together with a new bolt and new washer. All right, so as some of you know, I spent a lot of time parting out cars in my H4 days. It helped me fund the racing program. I would sell the parts on eBay. It was a lot of my own time. It was never like a business endeavor, but from that, I was able to save a lot of parts as well. And so, for example, this is a good detent spring bolt with a good washer. You can see very easily this is a bad washer. It's very crushed. It came on the car. And then this is also a bad bolt, obviously. And here's another good bolt. Now, these springs supposedly wear out over time. I'm not sure how true that is. One thing that is very true, though, is that these flare out like that. So if they're like this normally, they flare out like that. And you'll see the tips flare out, and then the balls will get stuck in them and prevent you from shifting properly. So whenever I'm selecting a used part, I try to inspect it to make sure it's in good shape. So here's the bolts. And then we have from Dylan Doosan, he hooked me up with these hybrid racing detent springs. So there's 3, because there's 3 in the transmission. There's 1 on the inside of the trans, but obviously I can't do that while it's in the car. So we're gonna open these, replace 2 of the detent springs, put a new bolt in with a good washer in there, and then tighten it all down, and it should be good to go. I'm gonna inspect for cracks in the case, because I did have to bang on the bolt a little bit to get the extractor on, so hopefully I didn't crack the case. And if I didn't crack the case, then great. And if I did, then transmission's coming out. So the black springs are the hybrid racing, and the gold ones are OEM. So you can see that the thickness of the coil on the black spring is a tiny bit thicker, and they're also a tiny bit longer. So thickness is one way to add stiffness to a spring. Length, as you compress it more and more, in practice, can also increase the stiffness of the spring as you get closer to that infinitesimal point of complete compression. You don't want them too long because like the Amazon ones are too long. They don't work. Read a bunch of reviews because I was going to get Amazon ones when I didn't have them. Luckily, my friends had my back. So we're going to put these black ones in and it should be good to go. All right, and I don't think that I'm actually going to keep these detent springs in there. I don't like the way it feels. Those two that I changed must have been for first and second. Third, fourth. I still have an issue. Fourth. First. Second. Oh, God. Third. Fourth. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. It somehow feels worse. Yeah, I'm taking those out. They suck. It was not worth it. All right. A little better. I think that I might have just messed something up in the trans when I was heating stuff, but yeah, I don't think I like those detent springs, so I'm gonna leave it like that. All right, and so what did I do here? So you know, in order to get this on, you have to remove the shift linkage from the bottom of the car. So I figured if I'm gonna go through all this effort, I might as well have some additional adjustability. So this is an OEM bar, and what I did was I just drilled an additional hole for adjustment to make it a little bit tighter if I wanted to. And then I did the same thing here, so you can see the new hole has a shiny bore to it. The old one has a painted bore. And then, yeah, so that will allow me basically, like, if I don't like how the car feels, if it's too loose, for example, up front, like if the front's too soft, I can tighten it up. And if that's too tight, then I can do one loose, one tight on either side. So we're gonna throw this on. I don't know if it's gonna make the car better, but maybe it will, so we'll see. All right, so I don't think I'm going to the gym today. This car, I just want to make sure it's like all squared away because I don't want to show up to the event this weekend and be wrenching on it. So one of the things that I'm doing is, so I got the sway bar on, okay, and I want to show you guys something. So over here we have an end link. So these are old end links. They might have been replaced at one time, but they are in good shape. They're just very old. But they're missing the rubbers. So there's usually a washer here and then a thick rubber isolator. The control arm goes here, a thick rubber isolator, and then another washer and a lock nut. Well, we don't have that. So instead, we have old radiator hose. So we're cutting it up into pieces and we're making rubber bushings with the radiator hose. And then we are using washers as the metal pieces to ensure that it all sticks together. So I'll show you. So in here, we have our sway bar, and you can see there's a washer on there, and then underneath of it there is radiator hose. And it seems to work pretty good. So cycling the car through the range of motion as best as possible. Let's see if I can get this light to do something useful for once in its life. Cycling it through its range of motion, doesn't seem to have any issues. So I did have some things that I wanted to measure in here. And so I am going to take the shocks out. But yeah, it seems like it's not binding at all, which is pretty awesome. And then we can always play with the stiffness on that arm now because we have two holes instead of one. And basically I'm just gonna make a second, you know, ghetto fabulous bushing setup on the other end link, and we'll be good to go. Other option that I have, which I just realized, is I could potentially use these spherical end links that I was going to use in the rear of the car, and then get a dowel that comes out here. It still doesn't solve the bottom end problem that I would be having. So I would still essentially be like, I mean, unless I was able to just like cut this off and then make a spherical mount that way on the bottom. But it's a lot of work, honestly. And I'm not really, I think that it would be easier if I just make the ones with the radiator hose for now, just because it's not pretty and it's probably not better than solid. If I could fab something out of these, like chop this off and then use this as the bottom mount and then use this as the top mount perpendicular to it, but it's just kind of a lot of work, and I want to have these as spares. These are just some cheap Blocks Racing ones I got off Amazon. The good ones are ASR. I really like the ASR ones. ASR sells a lot of overpriced stuff in my opinion, but they also do make really good stuff at the same time, so you kind of you gotta roll with the punches. So we're gonna continue making our bushings for this, and then I'll kind of show you what it looks like before it goes back on the car. Like, I should probably elaborate as to why I'm not just buying new ones. So the parts stores don't even sell them anymore. Like, you have to buy them and then they get shipped to your house. And then the ones that you do buy, it's like $30 a piece if you don't order from Rock Auto. Amazon doesn't have them, so I'm relegated to refurbing these. And honestly, I don't want to spend $60 on the car if all I have to do is cut up some rubber and find some washers, because it's going to save me so much in the long run. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but $60 is a lot. You know what I'm saying? $20 is $20. All right, I feel like a dumbass. Guess what these are? These are the bushings that you use for sway bars. Well, the good news is what I made is pretty dope, so I'm going to leave it on the car, and I'm going to save these for another wild time, or just throw them out. This is what happens when you hoard too many Honda parts. You go through your bins looking for DTC 60 pads, and then you end up finding bushings and DTC 30 pads. So whatever. Anyway, transmission is full, engine is full, so we no longer need to keep this no oil sticker on. We can go ahead and remove the one over here as well. And we're one step closer. So we got to put the header and the exhaust back on. And then in addition to that, that's primarily it. Right now I'm running DTC 60, one DTC 60 pad and one OEM pad in the rear of the car. I forget what my reasoning was for that. Basically, I think it was because I was locking up too much into turn 7 at Lightning, but I didn't have enough rear droop in the car, and that's why I was doing that. And it was diving too much, so I kind of think I figured that all out, and I kind of want to add more brake in the rear again, but I can't find my DTC 60s, so we're working on things, guys. Okay. So we looked at the rear calipers, and it said that it had a DTC 60 and an OEM pad. I pulled them off. Both pads looked to be DTC 60s. I couldn't tell if they were all DTC 60s by actually reading DTC 60 on the pad. So one of them had DTC 60. It was identical to the other pad on the other side of the car. Then there were markings on the other two that looked like Hawk markings. It didn't look like an OEM pad. It didn't have a backing plate or anything. So all right, it's probably got DTC 60. Read my notes. It was like I set the pads in the back because of an issue that I thought wasn't there. Jackie looked at the car from Little Buck Coaching, and she's like, oh, there's an issue there. And then I think I didn't put the pads on. So that's all set away. I greased up the slide pins in the rear because it's still on OEM brakes in the rear. So those are greased up. And then what we're doing now is we're bleeding the brakes. The brake fluid was pretty dirty in this car, which is surprising. It doesn't really usually get dirty. So it was a little bit dirty this time. So I don't really like that. So I'm going to push a master cylinder's worth of fluid through this thing. So this is my setup I wanted to show you guys. So what I did was I took a Schrader valve that I got from some old wheels, and then I basically JB welded it. So I put one nut here because it's an aluminum Schrader valve, one on the bottom of the cap, and then I JB welded it around here. And if there's any leaks at this JB weld, it's not enough to outdo the leaks that will come out of the seal. So you basically turn it on, see how it pushes the lid up, and you hold the lid down, and then while the valve's open, it just pushes all the fluid out. This works really well. I've been doing this since the middle of last season until now, and I love it. So I would recommend doing this 100%, better than the vacuum system, in my opinion. I like forcing the fluid through as opposed to sucking it through, because I think sucking it through induces more potential for air pathways to get in. Anyway, we're going to keep doing this, going to bleed it out, and then I think we'll be pretty much done for today.